Welcome back for another segment regarding Mental Health Awareness Month, which is observed each May. I am so happy to be back in the virtual space. Thank you for tuning in. I don't take it lightly that you came to watch this live, whether live or later. I appreciate you. My name's Angela Beasley. This is my platform. We're going to get started soon. But as we wait for this live to begin, I want you to hit the share button. Give me some likes. Give me some hearts. Let me know that you're feeling what is happening this month. The purpose of this live is to bring awareness to mental health matters. So number one, it increases awareness, reduces stigma, promote mental wellness, support access to care, and then empower individuals, and you will be empowered. Please don't be stingy. Love, like, share this live. It's going to be good. I can't wait for you to enjoy it. All right, we're about to get started. I'm so excited about today's conversation. But before we do, there's something I need you to do. I want you to share this live, whether you're watching live or later, and give us some hearts. Give us some likes. Let us know you like what you are watching. We're getting ready to hop into today's conversation. But before we do, let me reintroduce myself. Angela Beasley is a licensed professional counselor, international presenter, singer, and creative visionary with a heart for ministry and healing. With experience spanning mental health, media, and public speaking, she empowers audiences through faith-based insight, trauma-informed care, and authentic storytelling. A former podcaster and global presenter, Angela uses her voice, both in speech and song, to inspire transformation, cultivate hope, and restore lives across cultures and communities. Introducing Karen Monroe, who is a survivor of human trafficking, addiction, and childhood trauma, and has rebuilt her life through faith in Jesus Christ. She holds a bachelor's degree in religious studies and serves as a case manager at a recovery center in Jackson, Ohio, offering a unique perspective to those facing addiction, abuse, and exploitation. As a qualified behavioral health specialist, chemical dependency counselor assistant, and certified peer recovery supporter, Karen is passionate about helping others heal. She is available for speaking engagements at schools, prisons, and churches to share her powerful story of resilience and redemption from addiction, domestic violence, and human trafficking. Next up is Rico Beasley, a young emerging leader called to serve and address this current generation. He has a history of serving in various positions in church, boards, or organizations, and community efforts. He is a business owner, but his most prized position is being a father to his daughter, Zara Beasley. Through his life's testimony of change, overcoming challenges, and personal growth, he aims to make a difference in this generation. As we wait for this live to begin, I want you to hit the share button. Give me some likes, give me some hearts. Let me know that you're feeling what is happening this month. The purpose of this live is to bring awareness to mental health matters. So number one, it increases awareness, reduces stigma, promote mental wellness, support access to care, and then empower individuals, and you will be empowered. Please don't be stingy. Love, like, share this live. It's going to be good. I can't wait for you to enjoy it. All right, well, it's time to get started. Let's get this conversation going about addictions and prevention. We're talking all things addiction and prevention today. Tap in. Well, hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, if you're watching live or later. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Today is so near and dear and special to my heart. Why? Because we're talking all things addiction and recovery. I'm gonna hop on in and I'll tell my story of why it resonates so much to me with me. But um, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. Every May, this month is dedicated to mental health. And me as a mental health professional, I'm sitting in the rooms, I'm doing the work with individuals as I'm doing the work with and for and on myself. And it's just so near and dear. So I am really happy that you're watching. Please make sure you share. This topic or today is for whether you are in recovery, maybe you're battling with an addiction, maybe you have a family member or you know someone who deals with addiction, or you just want to learn more about it. This topic is for you. This session is for you. Addiction, it doesn't discriminate. It affects individuals, families, and communities. Today, I am so excited for my guest to join in a moment to talk about everything addiction, but not just talking about the problem, solutions, which is prevention. So I just want to tell a little bit of my story, and then I'm going to bring my guest on, so you can understand why does this resonate with me so much. So just a little bit about me. I never really talk about my testimony or my story, but I grew up with in a single parent home with my mother and my brother. So father was absent. Um, my mom tells me stories, and I'm trying to recall everything properly, but I was about maybe one when he left. Now, one, I don't take away from my mother. She was a great parent. She did an amazing job raising me. But when you don't have a father in your home, especially for a little girl, it does three things. It leaves a void in you. It leaves self-worth or self-esteem issues, right? Daddy issues. You deal with abandonment. And then most of all, you don't have identity. You don't know who you are. So with my father not being there, I went throughout life dealing with those things, dealing with those issues, right? Come later, I'm gonna fast forward. I was about 7, 8, or 9 years old, right? I'm already having this foundation of a broken foundation. And I encountered childhood sexual abuse. Now, the thing about trauma shifts you. It changes your trajectory. It even impacts your personality in some kind of ways, in some ways, especially when you're that young. You don't have identity. I started off with a rough start already. So foundation was already broken and you add trauma on so it shifts your trajectory, right? So now I have this a bigger void or a hole in my soul, which I'll call it, right? It's the perfect recipe for a possible addiction to develop. We're going to fast forward to Katrina, another traumatic experience. At this time, I'm a high schooler. It's my final year of high school. I'm looking forward to life coming up with the up and ups. And then my life is shaken yet again. And you have to understand, never fully or properly addressed any of the prior trauma. So trauma on top of trauma is building. And then now Katrina hits. I'm dealing with depression and anxiety, but I didn't have language for it. And then PTSD. I had to be relocated to a new city, Lafayette. Not too far, but far enough. go through my senior year, and I'm dealing with all of this. Now, we're going to get to the part where I graduate successfully from high school, enter into college. You have to understand, I come from like a squeaky clean background with my mother. My mother was very protective of me, never did drugs or alcohol. My stepfather, he'll give his testimony of how he used to smoke weed. However, that was never done in front of me. It was never demonstrated, but I always had this desire to drink alcohol, to try it. I remember, I laugh about it now, but I snuck alcohol into the house because I was going to drink it later, and I don't know who I got it from or where I got it from, but I hid it in the bottom of the refrigerator. And I go back and it's poured out. Like my alcohol that I worked so hard to bring into the house, gone. So I never had the opportunity until I went to college. And I remember the first time I tried alcohol, and I just felt liberated and free. All of those feelings, all of those traumas, all of those things that I carried throughout the years, when I had that drink, I felt free. And I ended up liking that feeling. Fast forward, I began to drink more and more and more. I remember that it came to a point where I was drinking to deal with my pain and my trauma in a negative way. And I stopped going to class. I stopped doing assignments. I even stopped going out, right? I was just in my room in a deep hole of depression, because we'll find out addiction like impacts your mind, your brain, everything, right? And I do recall there was this one moment, my lowest moment, I'll call it my rock bottom, where I was in emotional turmoil. I remember I was searching for peace, but I couldn't find it. It was nighttime and I walked the campus because there's a park on the campus, but I walked the campus just searching for peace that I couldn't find within. And obviously I wasn't thinking straight, because who would walk the campus at nighttime? Anything could have happened to me that night, but God was with me. Counselors, mental health and God, sometimes it doesn't mix in the rooms, but I'm a believer. God was with me. I remember ending up in the park, and there was just this stream of water in this grassy area, just like in Psalm 91. And I remember sitting in the grass, just trying to find peace. And I remember laying back in the grass. And all of a sudden, as I listened to the stream of water, see that Bible passage is real. It's real to me. I remember coming back to myself. And when I sat up, I was like, what am I doing? And let me get back home, right? Get back inside. But so addiction, or thank God I was on my way. I believe I was becoming dependent upon alcohol, but it can impact anyone. I was on the road to being addicted to a substance. Fast forward now to here and today. I now have the opportunity and pleasure to do the work to help individuals recover. I am a substance abuse or addictions counselor. I do group sessions on a weekly, daily basis where I sit in rooms with people who are like me, people who may have holes in their souls, who may have experienced trauma. And addiction doesn't always start with trauma, but is very prevalent. So I sit in rooms and I help people recover, and I'm so grateful. And for a long time, I separated the what I do from the who that I am. But I have an enlightenment that all things work together. This career chose me. I didn't choose it. And now I'm just grateful that I get to help people recover, because it could have been me sitting in the rooms trying to recover. So I thank you for listening to my story. But now I want to bring my guest up, because they have powerful, impactful stories. And we're going to start off with Rico Beasley, and let him tell his story. And then we're going to let Karen tell her story. Hey, Rico, how are you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Good afternoon now. Afternoon.
Good
How you
afternoon.
doing? I'm excited to be on and share my story, my testimony.
Sure.
A lot of the things that you said definitely resonated with me, And I believe that if we personally have not been impacted by substance abuse or traumatic experience, we know somebody who has, and that coming from any background. And so my background is just to give a story. Of my background, I grew up with both parents in the household. I grew up in a God-fearing household as well. I remember going to church as long as I can remember. Um, I was in church. I was, around church, you know, church, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
grew up in that environment. And so I had that foundation of um, a God-fearing family, God, a community of believers and everything like that. I worked in different ministries and church even from a young kid, you know what I'm saying? So I was
Yeah.
always involved. It wasn't distant from me, but there comes a point in time in your life where you have to take what is being deposited into you at where you're at church or you're in those settings, and kind of work it out for yourself. And I was becoming of age, and different experiences in life came to challenge my belief systems
Yeah.
and my foundation that was instilled in me as a young man, and more in particularly I would say from being in relationships with romantic relationships as a young age that kind of uh, wounded me. Having friendships and things of that nature also that wounded me, and certain personal disappointments. And also, because when you're young, you're still trying to figure things out. And so if you don't have a clear definition of what things are about or where you're headed or what you should be consumed with and what's important in your life, you'll begin to pull on different things. And if those
Yeah.
things don't help you, or they disappoint you, or they uh, you know, they leave you broken or whatever it may be. Like you said, also it can cause for a void to be there. And
Yeah.
I found myself in those early teenage years, with big voids because of disappointment, right? And
Yeah.
so I would say it was like I said, from relationships, friendships, and just not knowing exactly what it was all about and who God created me to be. And during those years in high school, there were a lot of suggestions and stuff like that of that were presented to me. And I would say because of the foundation that I had instilled to me at a young age, that I passed up a lot of opportunities. But I will say that eventually I gave into those opportunities to fill voids that I had not up until this point filled, and
Yeah.
I opened the door to first and foremost porn addiction and things like that. And because I
Yeah.
was trying to fill a void as far as, in my sexuality and different things like that. And so
Yeah.
I went from, trying to, fantasizing about things to actually wanting to do things and things like that. And so that was just things that I was just continuously consuming on a day to day basis. And then it went to further from that, because that wasn't enough uh, to drinking. And then
Yeah.
I always said, me personally, I might drink or whatever like that, but I would never do, drugs or anything like that, because I've seen, different people in my family that have been impacted by substance abuse and things like that. And
Yeah.
I was just personally like, man, that would never be me. I would never go to that level or, find myself in that place. But
Yeah.
through curiosity, I opened the door to trying drugs, and was first marijuana. And so I would just be around people that smoked. And for a long time, like I said, I,
Yeah.
I, I passed up a lot of opportunities to indulge, but
Yeah.
I through just curiosity and just keeping an ear open to culture, that I just thought that, okay, what's the worst it could do? And I remember trying it one day, and I knew my body um, rejected it. You know what I'm saying? Because it was completely new to me, so I didn't know what to do or whatever like that. So my mind, my body, it just rejected it. But I was like, I still was curious. And so I had a bad experience the first time, but I was like, well, it can't be like this every time. There's got to be a reason why people like it so much. And so, instead of just saying, okay, that's enough, you know what I'm saying? You had you tried it out, but that just curiosity kept going. And I just found myself becoming tolerant to it. And then, it went from just every now and then to, every day or every other day or any moment, any chance I can get, or the opportunity, if the opportunity was available, I wouldn't pass it up. And so I went from using or whatever like that to even selling at one point, and then not only from selling to also even because once you open the door to substances and things like that, you get tolerant to them, and so you it's almost like you have to function under a substance. And so I went from marijuana to pills to different other things, and I could go on and on, but I always would feel empty and that void, because there was a deeper lying issue that I wasn't addressing. And as I went through the years, I seen how the different substances and the lifestyle that the substance was bringing me into was robbing me from the person that I knew within myself that I should be and that I could be, and who I was supposed to be all alone. And so I went through pretty much a good bit of my teenage years, even almost into my adult years, where I was just, struggling back and forth on whether I should continue or quit, and continue and quit. And so it was a long struggle. What I realized is that there was things that I had to address before I was able to get from struggling to being able to conquer those addictions. And so, I don't want to spill everything because I know we have questions, but that's a little bit of my story. And obviously, if you see me here, speaking and speaking on the subject now, I'm definitely on the other end. So, but we'll get into that. So, yeah, that's just a bit of my story.
That's awesome. No, thank you much for your transparency, because that's how we consistently overcome, and then we help to pull others out. So, Rico, you touched down on a lot of things, right? And it's kind of like you're dipping into like the one of the questions, what is addiction? But we'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to give Karen Monroe an opportunity to speak.
Well, hi, how are you doing? Thank you for having me on. My name's Karen Monroe, and I'm an addiction support specialist in Ohio. And how I came to get here was I was given up for adoption, and I was raised by an adopted family in a church going place. You know, we went to church every time the door was open. I was raised in a Christian home with dysfunctions. And so we all have issues. And those are the things that, we hurt people. Hurting people hurt people. And so when I was small, I became addicted to drugs because I was sickly. And so my family gave me codeine cough syrup for the croup when I was like 6, 7 years old, and became addicted to um, just the different types of substances that were introduced to me
Yeah.
through my childhood. We went to, our reunion, and the first time that I remember drinking was when I was about 8 or 9 years old. We went to a family reunion, and my uncle, he made wine, So he gave all the kids wine. And so we all got drunk. And, so that we looked forward to going to those family reunions because that was the only time we did become like that. And so when I was 13 years old, I got hit by a car and it broke my leg in 3 places. And when I woke up out of surgery, I was in traction and I was introduced to Demerol and morphine drip. And at that point, when I would mash the button, everything emotionally that bothered me as a child, rejection, abandonment, it was gone.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so I became addicted to the Demerol and morphine drip. And then after that, the Vicodin and the Percocets at the age of 13. Now, when all that was finished after that year, what did I become? A drug seeker. So now I'm seeking drugs and validation with men, and it just progressed. The progression of the disease goes on. And it's really, an emotional place that you're lost, you're lost. And then you're a child. Your frontal cortex isn't, it's not even developed yet for you to even make conscious decisions of what is right and wrong. And then you're introduced to these moments that change your life and impact your life forever. So I got into trouble and I went into a Christian home in Texas in 1982, where they were fighting for rights for religion versus state, whole moment. And it was a little abusive. And so I got mad and I became more angry. And I say, I think everybody in my life is crazy. And I need to get away from them. And the only way that I could do that was to graduate from high school. So I focused on those 9 months and I graduated from high school at the age of 17. I returned home and I was angry and bitter because she put me there. And it seemed like a pileup of trauma and became prey to different older men because of my vulnerabilities of the addiction. It made me be able to be introduced into a lifestyle that I did not know existed until after I got there. So I wound up leaving home at 17, went to New York City. I hitchhiked from Georgia to New York. I was hungry and I was on the streets of New York and I was hungry. And a woman found me. And so I thought she was offering me safe residence, but she actually pimped me out for the first time. And at that time, I felt like I remember crying while the incident was going on and the tears was running down my face. And I knew that I was morally broken at that moment.
Yeah.
And when I got up, I knew that this was a survival technique that I needed to do in order to eat. Then, after the eating moment was over, now my addiction's taking over. And so then that fed into a lifestyle of homelessness and addiction over the next 8 to 9 years. And it was during the 80s. So it was discotheque moments. And I became a dancer, a stripper, and a prostitute on the streets, just walking around trying to figure out who I was. And the Lord was with me, though. And I cannot, stress that enough. I got saved when I was 7 years old. I was introduced to Jesus and I embraced him and asked him to come into my heart and save me. And because of that, I believe that he never left me. And so in my broken moments that I was when I was raped or beaten or kidnapped or what have you in the pimp type lifestyle and the lifestyle of the clubs, you're introduced to another level of trauma and levels of perversion that breaks all different moral codes that was encoded in me when I was a child. And so I wound up doing those things because I wanted to get high.
Yeah.
And because I got high, I liked the high, but I didn't like what I had to do to get the high.
Yeah.
And then the consequences became so severe that I had to face and turn to myself and say, hey, I can no longer successfully use without consequences that are going to kill me.
Yeah.
And so I had to turn and face myself and decide I have to quit. I cannot continue to use. And that was my turning point. And the rest of it, as it unfolds, evidently. And Mr. Rico, thank you for sharing your story. Miss Angela, thank you so much for sharing your story. I truly want to piggyback off of Mr. Rico when he says, and I'm on the other side of the fence now, right?
Yes.
You know, and life is good and I can choose my way out. I
Yes.
obey my way out.
Yes.
And it's through constant, consistent um, choices that are good and help bring health and healing to yourself that you're able to find the pathway out. And my biggest transformation was in my chair in prayer with the Lord, getting real
Mm.
and honest before Him. Other people, it's another path, right? Now, I did choose to go to AA. It is not my go-to moment. My go-to moment is the throne room of Jesus Christ.
Mm.
And my other go-to is a community. You know,
Yes.
I have AA. Not only do I have AA, I go to Celebrate Recovery once a week, and I love that. And so, because of the way that God has made my path to recovery, is that I embrace the healthy spiritual aspects of individuals that God places in my life, not that I go out and seek, God sends to me. And so I'm grateful for that. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you.
No, sure. Oh, no, for sure. Beautiful story. You touched down on so many different things, and I can't wait for us to move into the question portion. And just for anyone who doesn't know, Celebrate Recovery is a faith-based version of recovery. AA instills principles of faith or God as well, but Celebrate is like full blown faith based. So I love what you both said. It kind of resonates that we see a commonality between us, that the holes in our souls kind of led us down the path, right? Um, it's something, and that's why we have to have these conversations and talks, because I'm going to talk about what addiction is. But oftentimes, family members, especially here in the culture of Louisiana where we are now, but Karen's on the East Coast in Ohio. But oftentimes family members don't even understand offering a substance like, here's a little drink or something, how that could be awakening neural pathways in the brain, desiring more of a substance or a drink or something. Or sometimes addiction forms by not by choice. An accident happens. Karen talked about being sickly in her childhood, having to go through medical treatment, etc., being given drugs like morphine or Percocet for pain. Um, we don't understand the implications of what's happening in the brain, right? We're awakening neural pathways or the reward system, which I'm going to get into in a moment to talk about the neurobiology of addiction and why it becomes something that we seek. But I want to open up the floor, right? There is a working definition of what addiction is, and I'll end with that. But I want to ask you to, how do you define addiction? There's no right or wrong answer. How do you define it?
Um, I'll go first. I'm sorry. I would say addiction is this strong desire or inclination to do something. and it gets to the point where it's the inclination or the desire overrides reasoning, overrides, like I said, overrides reasoning, and you have to have it. And I think that is uh, the point of addiction. When you get to that point, you could say that you are addicted to something where it overrides reasoning to the point where it's almost like a reflex. It becomes natural to want you are drawn to it. Yeah.
Good answer. What about you, Karen?
Well, for me, I think anything that you do, good or bad, taken to the extreme becomes an addiction.
Yeah.
And it really plays out no matter what you do, right? So it's like, yes, it is a repetitive motion that causes destruction in my life. For me, that's what addiction is. And so, good or bad, I can make choices that cause me to go down. And it can be a great thing, right?
Yeah.
If it's taken to the extreme, it becomes a negative
Yeah.
instead of positive. That's where I'm at with that.
Okay, I agree with both. The term per se of what addiction is, or I'll explain what the neurobiology of addiction is. Essentially, we look at the brain. The brain is a team of players. Like your
Yeah.
brain is one organ, but it has many different teams in it. And Karen talked about the prefrontal cortex earlier. You know your stuff, girl. I see you, right? But there are different parts of the brain. I don't want to get too techie, but I'm gonna show a simplified version. But so there's the nucleus accumbens, which is the reward center when you do something enjoyable, like eat your favorite food. Down here, maybe gumbo, crawfish. It's saying that felt good. Let's do it again. I want more. Then there's the prefrontal cortex, as Karen stated, which is the decision-making part of our brain, right? And it helps us to think ahead, make choices, and control impulses, right? Then there's the amygdala, and it's in the middle of the brain. And that part handles our emotions and fear. It's the primal part of our brain that says, I need to eat. It controls wanting pleasure like sex or breathing, right? And it just reminds you of something. It even can remind you of a craving for a substance. And then the hippocampus is like the memory keeper. So essentially, addiction is defined as, it's kind of like a hijacking of the brain, right? To want to use a substance, or even, as Karen stated, compulsive behaviors,
Yes.
wanting to do something no matter what the consequence is. And the consequence could be harmful, it could be legal issues, it could be harm to self, it could be even death. So it's like a hijacking of the brain. But Karen stated, now when we're in a place where this prefrontal cortex has taken over, now we can make better decisions, better choices to live better lives. So that's so good, y'all. That's so good. Now I want to know, what are some myths? What are some myths that you all believe are associated with addiction? Karen, you wanted to speak?
So if you could reframe the question, can you
Okay.
reframe the question?
For sure. So we're here to talk about the stigma of addiction, right?
Yes.
People have so many different thoughts towards or about addiction, and oftentimes it's not true, right? One myth I'll give is people of a higher position or ranking in life, they don't deal with addiction, right? But the truth of the matter is, addiction can impact anyone. I've encountered individuals who were doctors, lawyers, of some would say high status, but addiction doesn't discriminate. So I'm wondering, do you all perceive any myths regarding addiction?
I can say that there were certain myths that I had in life regarding addiction. Was So I believe that all church people were perfect. And so, therefore, if I needed an answer, I could go there to get help that I needed. But I
Yeah.
found out that no one is perfect.
Yeah.
And so that was a myth that I had to debunk in my own life. But as far as addiction does not care. It
No.
will take you wherever it wants to go. It does not care that you have a child. It does not care that you have a life. That's only design is to kill you.
Hmm.
The lie is, for me, was that I could successfully use without consequences one day.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a big myth, right? That's a big myth. And thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah.
have some other. Oh, go ahead, Rico. What do
No,
you
I
have?
was just gonna say that that was my myth too. That the myth is that you can kind of function, with that addictive personality and things like that because you get to a place where you think because when you're under, what I'm saying, or when you're dealing with addiction, you spend a lot of times trying to keep it together, you know what I'm saying, and making sure that the cracks don't show and things like that. And so you can get to a point where you're able to kind of cover the cracks enough, and then you think that you're safe, you know what I'm saying, or there's no consequences or things like that, or there's nothing going on underneath the surface. And so, but there comes a point where it's faulty and it begins to break, and what I'm saying, you realize that you're really not in control of it, you know what I'm saying, and you trying to control it, it actually is, even growing even more and taking even more control of you. So I think that that is the myth, that you can successfully function addictively.
No, that's so good. That's so good. And again, we know that it can't happen that way, right? And that's why we shift into making better choices, getting into the prefrontal cortex, leaning on our higher power when we feel weak, or walking out full deliverance. So that's where we all are, right? I want to talk about some other myths regarding addiction. Like, some feel like addiction is a moral failing or a lack of willpower. Have y'all ever heard of that one?
Yes.
Okay, and we know that it's not. Addiction, now my counselor had says that addiction is a chronic brain disease, it's not a character flaw. So we find that some of us may be more predisposed to having an addictive personality rather than others. In the rooms, I find that some people say, why can't I have just one drink, or drink normally, or engage in other things normally? But we know that um addiction is considered a brain disease. That's a myth. So it's not a I'm a bad person. No, it's just something that is instilled within us. Another myth is prescription drugs are safer than street drugs. Again, no.
Oh.
The neurobiology of addiction tells us that dependence occurs when we are constantly using a substance, especially if it's appealing to our reward system in our brains. So therefore, just because it's prescribed doesn't mean it's safe. So just because your doctor prescribes it and you are rationalizing, I'm not going to a drug dealer to get this substance, that doesn't mean that it's safe. I'm going to give one more myth, that addiction, or talking about addiction, encourages drug use. In actuality, talking about a problem or bringing light or shedding light to an issue takes away the stigma, takes away the mystery, takes away feeling weird talking about a certain topic, and bringing truth and shedding light on those things. So those are a few myths regarding addiction. Um y'all, so I want to shift to talking about, Rico talked about it earlier, right? Compulsive behaviors. So addiction is not just the act of drinking or using drugs. Rico talked about porn addiction, right?
Yes.
There's also love addiction or relationships, right? That's an addiction. We can be addicted to another individual. What about gambling? What if I'm going to the casino, or I'm placing bets on horses or pools for sports? Gambling can be an addiction. And anything done in excess that's bringing damage, like financially, relationally, legal wise, that's when it becomes a big problem, right? Let's talk about gaming or social media or the internet, being on the internet. All of those things could be addiction.
Yes.
Some people workaholics. We've all heard of workaholics, right? Karen's like, yeah, right. Working excessively can be an addiction. So that's another myth, that addiction is only limited to alcohol or drugs. No, not at all. Did y'all have anything y'all wanted to say about that?
Yes, I will. I will. So I I became addicted to men. In my addiction, it was one toxic relationship after another. So I don't know, but in the pattern of domestic violence, um, mine was the abuse. So it
Yeah,
kicked off chemicals in my brain,
yeah,
and I felt loved and supported because he was so jealous. He was just,
yeah,
but at the same time, I was hurting. I'm winding up in the hospital, and
yeah,
so like I saw a pattern over the years for me that I went from one toxic relationship to the other, and that all progressed in violence. So,
yeah,
like the first one was violent, but the ending one was the worst, right? And
yeah.
so, like, and that's, we never know the end from the beginning. We just see the patterns as they go. And hindsight is always 2020, and toxic relationships was a big thing for me. And then I can switch over into anything.
Yeah.
Like I can switch from toxic relationships to overeating ice cream to, gaming on my phone, and getting addicted to different podcasts and all, not even thinking that, that these are little, but it's just a toehold to,
Yeah.
bring me.
No,
Yeah,
that's so good.
I
Yeah.
Go ahead,
think
Rico.
I think also addiction is basically wanting something outside of yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Wanting uh, the thought that something outside of me is going to make me whole or complete. And I think just like Miss Karen was saying earlier about how her wholeness or completeness comes from being at the throne of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And so the I think the thing is, the myth is that a lot of people think that if you do this or that or whatever like that, or if you can add this resume to what I'm saying, your lifestyle, that it will bring you to a place of peace or tranquility, whatever it may be. And I think that that's how it grows. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It goes from, like Karen said, it was men at one point, then it was
Yeah.
this, and then if that wasn't enough, then it was that. And so me, I'm always I mean, I have it right here. I come I'm from the book. So there's a scripture in Galatians talks about the works of the flesh, and it just lists all the different things that the works of the flesh are, you know what I'm saying? And it talks about, fornication, which is, sex out of marriage and things like that. So you have right there, when you're in the works of the flesh, you wanting to, sleep around or find, love and through sexual relationships. It talks about uncleanness and and that and lewdness and things like that. That's where you get into drinking and devouring the temple, you know what I'm saying, doing harmful things. I think that's another definition of addiction is self-harm, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
And so you get into the works of the flesh, and then that's how those things begin to transpire in your life. And so I would just say is just wanting something outside of yourself, you know what I'm saying, that extra reach, you know what I'm saying, and that gets us in trouble,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to tie into what you both said. So Karen was talking about again like cross addiction where we
hmm
stop one harmful um behavior and we engage in another and just because it's not our main behavior we feel or rationalize that this is healthier and this is okay.
yeah.
But we know it's not. And Karen also talked about anything done in excess. If I drink too much water, I can literally drown my body. And even though drinking water is a positive and good thing, done in excess can be negative and harmful, right? And then Rico went and touched down on again roots causes of addiction, which we're going to talk about next, right? Or trying to fill voids or the holes in our souls in negative ways. But I
hmm
want to say this, right? I do wear that counselor hat, but I am a believer and I know that if it weren't for God pulling me out
Yes.
as I was going deep,
right.
deep, I was on the path to destruction.
Yeah.
But if it weren't for him coming and intervening in my timeline,
hmm
and in my story, God knows where I would be. There are so many versions of myself that I could be. I could be somebody's baby mama with a bunch of babies. I could have ended up what I was in a domestic violence situation at one point. There are so many versions of myself, but I'm so grateful for not just me, but all of us walking in freedom, right? So I'm loving conversations like this that bring awareness and lets people know that there's freedom. If you're dealing with an addiction today, if you resonate with anything that was said, even if you have a hole in your soul on today, there is freedom for you.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I want to talk about some root causes of addiction, and we alluded to some, right? Trauma and trauma. We talked about childhood trauma. I experienced sexual abuse. Karen gave her testimony, but childhood trauma could be neglect, abuse, and abandonment. Um, physical, emotional, or sexual. It could be a witnessing of an act or event or a loss of a loved one, right? That's one way uh or root cause of addiction. Could be mental health disorders. Oftentimes I find that people come in the rooms and they express maybe they weren't given the language when I went through Katrina, right? And I was experiencing depression, anxiety, and then a lot of us experienced PTSD from that very traumatic event. We didn't have the language for mental health or to explain what was going on within us. So a lot of people may cope in ways. It's not a healthy coping way, but it's a way to coping mechanism with mental health disorders. Um environment, right? Maybe I saw because oftentimes we don't realize how impactful the blueprints that are laid before us from our family and friends and people in our environment are who nurture us, right? We don't realize that the blueprint or the example being demonstrated in front of us we internalize, right? Example, my mother was a social worker. She toted me to class as a baby, and look what I'm doing. I'm a counselor, not quite a social worker, but representation matters. So if it's being done in front of us or it's being social or presented as being socially acceptable,
Yeah.
then maybe I learned to I learned that maybe drinking or having drugs or different behaviors wasn't a bad thing because it was demonstrated in front of me, right?
Right. Right.
I talked about genetics and biology. There is a neurobiology of addiction. So we can put two people next to each other, right? And they can go through the same things in life, have similar experiences, try the same substance. However, they might not have the same outcome. Person A may try a substance A for the first time and it does nothing to them and they never try it again, they never pick it up again. But person B may try that same substance with the same background, same history, and they can even be related, okay? But they try that same substance and it does something different for them, right? So it could be a genetic and biological thing. And then I want to talk about the unmet emotional and spiritual needs. And this is kind of where we're going to park it. And I'm going to give my guests a moment to give their last words, right? For me, there was a lot of void. I keep going back to that. The holes in my soul, like from childhood, the trauma, the experiences, the wounds that were never dealt with. There were a lot of unmet needs within myself. I didn't have a safe space to talk about things. That's why I'm grateful for what the work that I do, because I am a safe space for many, right? And I so happen to be a person who believes in God. So if people open up the door to talk about those things, I'm often able to lead and guide them in that capacity as well. But there were a lot of unmet needs emotionally, mentally, physically in my life that kind of led me to alcohol for a period of time in my life, right? I just want to say again, as we're coming to a close, because this conversation was good, I wish we have more time or had more time, but we may pick it up another time, that there is hope for you. I do work as a counselor. I help people recover. I help them heal. I help them to unpack. I help them to dig through the trenches of their past and childhood. And I don't discredit what I do. I love the work that I do, and I'm graced for it and I'm purposed for it. But my true recovery and my true healing started with God. I remember again being led by that stream of water. That's my Psalm 91 moment. Everybody has one. Everybody has a rock bottom that they can identify, but my Psalm 91 moment where he led me beside a stream of water and I sat in a green pasture and I literally felt my soul restored. I know this isn't very counselory of me, but I want to tell you that there is hope for you. There's healing for you. There is freedom for you. But you have to be willing. If you identify that you have an issue with an addiction, a substance, or compulsive behavior we talked about, it's okay. There's no judgment. There's no judgment. We talked freely and candidly about our lives, and this is uncomfortable for us. We are being transparent, but the goal is to let you know that there is life and freedom on the other side or the other end. So I just want to let you know that there's freedom available for you. Recovery is available for you. You can regain control if you're dealing with addiction. If you have a family member or a friend that you identify may be dealing with an addiction, I want you to reach out to me in my inbox on Facebook, Angela Beasley, on Instagram at Angie B Creative, or those two methods, and I can get you some resources. And then lastly, if you want to learn more about it, tap in with me too. Conversations like these help to address the stigma around these conversations and also help us to further prevent addiction from occurring. So I want to give my guests final words before we log off. Karen.
Okay. The opposite of addiction is connection. So, isolation is a tool in order to rob you of your voice so that way you will stay stuck in that addicted state and not get the help that you need.
Yeah.
In Psalm 32 and 3, it says, "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long." So, I can see a parallel in my life where when I suffered in silence, I could not get any help because I didn't have the capacity to help myself. So
Mhm.
connection, there is hope. You are not alone. Linkage to Care is available. Get in touch with Angela. She'll be great to connect you with the resources that you need. Thank you for having me.
Of course, Karen. Thank you so much for all the wisdom and the nuggets that you dropped today. Rico, what's your final words?
I have so much to say, but I'm gonna dense it. I would just say that for me, I think that because you were talking about the different ways that the environments in which addiction can kind of trigger, and I think for me, what it was for me, because I didn't go into extensive explanation of everything that went on in my life, but I know for me, for the longest, I battled mentally with cognitive dissonance, and to the point where it went off into schizophrenia, and that
Wow.
was because I wasn't secure with
Yes.
being who God created me to be. And so I would just say that what addiction does, it does for the person who had maybe have a relationship with God, or have a good foundation in your family and your community. What it does, like Karen says, it comes to isolate you. It comes to bring you out of that space, out of that place of wholeness, and it brings you out into the darkness, right? And then it engulfs itself around you, right? And then when you try to get out, it plays on tricks on your mind. And so I spent a lot of times in the dark when I didn't need to be in the dark, right?
Yeah.
And then when I would try to come out in the light, right, I would be convicted, or saying, what I'm saying, and there was shame and guilt, right? And so then
Yeah.
you go back into the darkness, right? You're free to go, you know what I'm saying? Because there might be someone here that might be dealing with guilt and shame of, what you do in secret, right? And you have to know that God loves you and He cares for you, and He does have a plan for you. So it's not, if you've become a victim of substance abuse, or different traumatic things or whatever like that. It's not the end of your story, right? That's what the enemy, um, that's what the enemy would like you to believe, and you kind of go back and forth into feeling like you have this under control because you can mask it up, right? And then you put on a front. But God is just saying to you, and to the person who's dealing with those things, just come to Him as you are, and believe exactly what He says about you. The Bible says that if any man is in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things have passed away, and behold, all things are new, and all things of God. And so when I begin to believe that everything about me is of God now, my past didn't define me anymore, and I was given the strength to go on and be all that God has created me to be. I'm a father, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a community leader, I'm a youth young adult leader, and that's all because I chose to believe what God says rather than what my trauma and my pain was telling me. So that's just all I have, and I just want to encourage someone that's dealing with those things to know that you can get to the other side of it.
Yes.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
Rico. I want to thank you both for just your yes. I was just trying to be led this month as a professional, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month. I wanted to capitalize to talk about many, many different topics. And I feel as if anyone who encounters this live, that some kind of liberation, some type of freedom occurred for you. I want you to make sure you share this with someone. You can tag people, If you want to be anonymous, just share it with them. But there is freedom for you. And we didn't get too deep into the prevention part. I guarantee I will have more conversations about this because this is my lane. This is my passion to talk about these things. But one way we prevent is we educate the next generation. We talk,
Yes.
we have conversations, especially with the youth, right? I want you to get comfortable having uncomfortable conversations because this can be something to save someone's life. Having conversations, being educated, right? There are many different resources that I'm going to place later, but there you just Google it. SAMHSA, SAMHSA.com is a great resource where you can go and learn about different substances and the stats and the technical things, and then also preventative measures, right? But we're starting with having conversations. Talk about these things, educate yourself, know what's out there. Start with the youth. Prevention starts with the youth, right? Or and also knowledge. So that's all I have today. I just want to give a thank you for everybody who's joined me so far. We talked about relationships and marriage with Pastor James and Phyllis. We talked about depression in women and men with DC Cross and Alicia Bentley, depression in women and men. Well, the mental health and success with Jamal Ford and Kevin Lampton. And today, addictions and prevention with my two lovely guests, Karen and Rico. Thank y'all so much. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you. Tune in. I will be announcing what's next pretty soon, but thank you for watching today. Bye bye.